First of all, this video is not going to have much substance. It's not going to have a lot of detail. It's going to be more of a lightweight throwaway video of me just kind of rambling along. Because I was thinking, we all had the same wrestling fantasy back when we were younger, right? Growing up with guys like The Rock and Stone Cold, growing up, we imagined ourselves as them. You know, walking down the aisle at WrestleMania and that magical moment where we pin the world champion and the crowd counts along. 1, 2, 3, yeah! You know, we all had that wrestling dream. And a big part of that wrestling dream was the larger-than-life star power that we had and that we wanted to be like. We grew up with guys like The Rock and Stone Cold and the NWO, whose larger-than-life presence made us want to be that. And because we don't have that anymore, in my opinion, it's damaging the wrestling dream. You know, people always talk about how guys like Shawn Michaels and The Rock, they're the kind of guys where, you know, guys want to be them and girls want to be with them. Well, you can't say that about today's main event scene. Who the hell wants to be Dean Ambrose? Who the hell wants to look like Kevin Owens? Who the hell dreams of one day waking up looking like this? I mean, how ugly do you have to be to want to wake up one day looking like Kevin Owens? These modern day WWE stars, in my opinion, they don't have the look, they don't have the charisma, they have nothing that we would want to be, you know? Well, most of us anyhow. One of the saddest things I saw at the WWE live event I went to, among the many sad things I saw, was there was this fat kid, alright, and he was in a Dean Ambrose t-shirt. Now, he was a little bit smaller than the fat chicks. He was probably a 3XL, but he was wearing a Dean Ambrose t-shirt, and he was trying to copy Dean Ambrose's comb-over, right? He had the back of his hair pulled over the front of his head, and he was standing outside the arena by the barricade before the event trying to meet some wrestlers. Now imagine Dean Ambrose getting out of his car and seeing that guy. Like, how does Ambrose even respond to that? You know, does he run up to the guy and give him a high five? Same comb over, yeah! Or does he see the guy and like a sweat drop comes down his forehead like... There was also somebody at the live event that copied Seth Rollins' hairstyle, but instead of the yellow stripe, it was pink. So, and the thing is, he was walking around like he was the man, like, you know, walking around the arena, yeah, man, look at me, dude, how come nobody tells these guys what they look like? How come these guys' friends don't tell them they look like shit? How come nobody's telling these guys, you know, they've got freaking Dean Ambrose comb-overs, they've got pink stripes down there, and they're walking around like they're the man, and nobody's telling them what they look like. But other than guys like that, other than the type of fans who would actually try to copy Dean Ambrose's comb-over, the vast majority of us fans, in my opinion, would never want to look like Dean Ambrose or Kevin Owens. All right? The so-called superstars of today lack those larger-than-life aspects that would make us want to emulate them. And in my opinion, that's damaging the wrestling dream. Because I would never imagine myself as Kevin Owens winning the world title. If I looked like Kevin Owens, I'd be sitting in the shower crying. Right? We want to be like The Rock. We want to be like Stone Cold. We want to be like Bret Hart. We want to be like Shawn Michaels. We want to be like the Outsiders. Who the hell imagines himself as some big fat bearded guy with a KO on his shirt? Again, how ugly do you have to be to want to be that? Right? I can't imagine most fans wanting to look like Kevin Owens or Dean Ambrose. I don't understand guys like Dean Ambrose. He's in the main event scene of the world's most visible wrestling promotion. Why does his hair still look like that? Why did he not do more for his hair? Why didn't he take more action? Look, I mean, I even once took action. Like, remember those old late night infomercials for hair transplants where it's like, and it's your own hair. Come in for a free consultation. Remember those? Well, back in school, there was a period of time where I was like freaking out about my hair because I noticed what seemed to be like a spot over here, and I was getting like really worried about it. So instead of just worrying about it, I went into one of those free consultations. Right? Now this is funny. All right. I walk into the waiting room, and all the guys in the waiting room remind me of Mean Gene Okerlund and Paul Heyman, right? That's what they look like, right? So I walk in looking pretty much like I do now, and I'm like walking by them, and as I'm walking by them, they're like looking up at me like, I'm like, I'm just walking by and going to my seat. In hindsight, they were probably thinking, damn, this place fucking works. So I'm sitting there in the waiting room looking pretty much like I do now with all these guys that remind me of Paul Heyman. I get called into the office of the hair specialist. The hair specialist sees me. He starts yelling at me. He's like, "You are not a candidate for this procedure!" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "No, you are not! I wouldn't even know where to put the hair." And I'm like, "Dude, I can show you where to put the hair." And he's like, "Sir, I can't help you." And I'm like, "Dude, man, I'm still in school. I don't even have a girlfriend. I need to get laid. You gotta help me, man." And he's like, "Listen, I understand where you're coming from, guy to guy, but you are not a candidate for this procedure." And then he kicks me out of there. So you see, if even I can take action, then what excuse does Dean Ambrose have for his hair looking the way it does? Why doesn't it look better by now? Why doesn't he go to the free consultation? If he went to the free consultation, I'm guessing the hair specialist wouldn't yell at him. The specialist would probably take one look at Dean Ambrose and be like, "I'm glad you came." And Dean Ambrose would probably be like, "Thank you." But going back to the wrestling dream, in my opinion, as much as the wrestling dream is damaged for the male fans, it's even more damaged for the female fans. I mean, like I said, I grew up on badass female wrestlers like Medusa, and the reason I liked them was not because they were in some scantily clad outfit. The reason I liked them is because they were awesome. But these days, I don't even know why a female would want to become a wrestler. You know, getting paid less, walking out to an audience of big, fat, smelly morons screaming stupid stuff, and then having to go in an autograph session and have that big, fat, smelly moron put his arms around you for a picture. It's like, ew! You know, like, why would any female want that? You know, going out in a little mini skirt, shaking your butt for these idiots, you know, for what? For what reason? You know, like these female wrestlers, like, what's their objective? You know, what are they shooting for? What's the end goal? You know what? To be one of those generic divas in the WWE? To be like Paige? Is that really the benchmark? The bar is set by Paige? You know, that's not a really good bar, in my opinion. You know, like, so basically, in my opinion, as much as the wrestling dream is damaged for male fans, it's even more damaged for female fans. Like I said in my last video, there were points in wrestling history where you had wrestlers like Medusa and Bull Nakano where you saw the glimmer of potential for a respectable, powerful women's division. There was a point in time where the TNA Knockouts division was my favorite part of mainstream wrestling. But look at the Knockouts division now, where we have the Dollhouse Girls. Of all the indie female talent that's out there, I can't believe that those are the two that made it to national television. First of all, they can't wrestle. All of their televised matches have been terrible. Second of all, they do not have the look for the Dollhouse gimmick. They look like they got kicked out of the Star Wars cantina for being too ugly, snuck into the Impact Zone, and raided the Knockouts wardrobe. I mean, look at this. It looks like two velociraptors attacking Taryn Terrell. So what you're telling me is that female fans are supposed to want to be like that? What you're telling me is that male fans are supposed to want to be like Kevin Owens and Dean Ambrose? We went from Stone Cold and The Rock to Mr. Comb-Over and the Pillsbury Doughboy? How are we supposed to stay engaged in such a product? How is the wrestling dream supposed to stay strong when the world champion is a cowardly character with a yellow stripe in his hair and he's being challenged by a cartoonish crazy guy with a comb-over? Right? Wouldn't you rather just have Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels? Speaking of wrestling fangirls, I've noticed that wrestling fangirls are usually really dedicated. Like you'll see the Jeff Hardy fangirl, and she's all dressed up like Jeff Hardy, and she probably has Jeff Hardy posters all over her wall. And the Dean Ambrose fat chick fangirls, their wall is probably covered with pictures of Dean Ambrose and other guys with comb-overs. And at live events, they're cheering for their guy 100%. There has been only one time where I've seen fangirls change their minds about a wrestler during the event. I was at a live TNA event, and there was this group of girls, and they were all wearing Austin Aries shirts. Right now, these girls are actually pretty good looking, right? Way better looking than those fat chick Dean Ambrose fangirls. Well, anyway, I was sitting at the event, and these fangirls were sitting near me, and during the event, they kept screaming for Austin Aries. And this must have been their first time seeing Austin Aries at a live event, because when Austin Aries actually came out, these fangirls, they changed their minds on the spot about Austin Aries. They couldn't believe how Austin Aries looked so short and scrawny, and they kept pointing out how he had no ass. Right? Like every time Austin Aries turned around, they'd be like, he has no ass! You know? Like, now, this is the kind of stuff that I would never notice about a wrestler, at least not a male wrestler, but these fangirls noticed it, and it stopped making them fangirls, you know? Like, and now the thing is, now that these fangirls have pointed it out to me over and over and over and over and over again, now whenever I watch Austin Aries wrestling on TV, I can't help but think to myself, wow, he really does have no ass. In a previous video, I talked about how I refused to come into contact with John Cena merchandise. Well, I recently made an exception. I got this John Cena Scooby-Doo toy set for the same reason I got this shirt, and that's to remind myself in the future just how stupid the PG Era wrestling product got. So in the future, when wrestling hopefully gets better, I can look back and say, this was the stupidity of the PG Era. And it was in this spirit that I also got the movie Russell Madness. Because when I heard that there was a new movie coming out about a little dog that becomes a professional wrestler wrestling against humans, I just had to have it. Because it seemed to be the exact kind of thing that describes this stupid PG Era wrestling product. Hey, I even got the deluxe box set just to get the full experience. But the thing is, something surprised me about Russell Madness, and that's that it's actually a pretty good movie for a kid's movie. It's actually a part of the Air Bud series and not a WWE product. And when you hear the storyline to this movie, you'll understand how it could never be a WWE product. Look, here's the storyline to the movie, all right? In the movie, wrestling used to be divided into territories, all right? Different territories. And each territory had its own promotions, and these were the good old days, you know? These were the good times. But then, an evil, greedy wrestling promoter starts a national wrestling promotion called the WUF and starts running everybody out of business. This evil, greedy wrestling promoter starts talking about how it used to be about wrestling, but now it's about entertainment. Now it's about superstars, right? And the good guys in this movie are one of the indie territory promotions that were previously run out of business, and now they're trying to fight their way back into business. You know, that's the storyline of the movie. Can you see how there's no way this is a WWE product? Doesn't it feel like the writers really did their homework when writing this movie? Now, make no mistake, this is a kid's movie about a dog that becomes a professional wrestler. But I was surprised that I can't really give it a negative review because it's surprisingly good for what it is. Right? I was surprised by the storyline, and I was surprised that the world champion in the movie was played by John Morrison, Johnny Nitro. Right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being neutral, I'm going to have to give it a 5.5. The 0.5 being the surprising storyline about the territories and stuff. So yeah, surprisingly good. Can't really bash it. Oh, and yes, the dog character in this movie does have more moves than Roman Reigns.